that one's gonna be a problem. So screwed that up on the table saw somehow. Look how crooked that is. This one's nice and square, so looks like we get to recut that, and thankfully I'm pretty sure we actually have a piece of extra stock, so got lucky on that one. I have no idea how I got that to be so stinking crooked. I also have a small confession. So the other night I was sitting down in the peace and quiet of nighttime home and looking through this project and kind of re-inventorying where I'm at and what's left to do to get it completed. And let's just say that my to-do list about doubled. I found quite a few things with the project that I hadn't noticed before that I added that are going to be challenges. We'll deal with those as we get to them. It also made me realize that we're substantially inadequate on our electrical. And I'm not sure if that's just because we didn't have the foresight. I suppose that's what it is. I mean, we don't know what we're doing, and we're trying to build a house for the first time. And this project, which by the way is our laundry kitchenette area, is kind of a training opportunity for the future cabinets in the rest of the house. And so we just don't have the foresight. We don't know what we're working on here. So then as I'm doodle sketching and going through my measurements and everything, triple checking everything, I realized I forgot two very important pieces of wood. So on this large upper cabinet, this is our 24-inch upper, it's gonna go on the end. It actually has a 3/4 inch reveal on the frame. You'll notice this piece of wood is 2 inch and this is 1.25 inches. And the reason for that is there's actually a panel that goes on the end of this that is visual, because we've obviously got, you know, no finish on the plywood and we've got these pocket hole screws. You don't want to see all that, so we're going to be putting a finish panel on the end. The same is true of the drawer base that's over there that we're using right now. Has an end panel, and I totally blitzed adding those to the list. So we did not cut the frame stock and we didn't cut the panels, and so we basically have to do double work. If you followed yesterday's video, you know that we, by the skin of our teeth, had just enough 1/2 inch plywood left over from all the drawer stock and the backs to do the panels for all the doors and drawers that have panels. And then we're out of plywood. Only I forgot to account for the end panels that I just mentioned. So I was like really irritated, because now I either have to go buy a whole new sheet of plywood or figure something else out. And I got to thinking to myself, what would a really smart woodworker do? Here's my little boneyard of 1/2 inch plywood, and it's looking pretty thin, which is a good thing, makes me feel good, not much is going to waste. But the problem is turning this into a 24 by 31 inch panel, not very easy, at least not for me. But I got a stroke of luck and I found in my boneyard another sheet of plywood. So in a bit of midnight stroke of luck, we got by. We had just enough, I'm telling you, 1/8 of an inch, just enough 1/2 inch plywood to make the end panels for these cabinets. So we got lucky. So yesterday I just spent a little time in the morning knocking some stuff out before doing errands the rest of the day, and we got all the frame stock most of the way. We still need to finish it up, which means moving the planer back in and redoing a lot of the work that we did the day before, but that's okay. We'll get that knocked out today. So today's goal is to get all these pieces turned into the panel doors and the panel drawer fronts. If by some chance you're just joining us, we've been working on this cabinet project for quite a while now. It's been a steep learning curve. It started off with bringing home our shopsmith and then cutting all the panels down for all the carcasses or the boxes, and then working through the joinery and the dadoing and all the backs and stuff like that. And then we started working on all the drawers and getting all the drawers built, which was another learning curve, getting all the joinery done on that, getting everything to fit correctly. Then we installed all the drawer slides to make everything work. That was fun. It was scary at first, but I'm happy to report it went well. So you missed that if you're just joining us. And then we started working on all the frames. We're doing what's called an inset framed cabinet. So our cabinets actually have face frames, and then the doors and drawers are actually flush with the face frames. So we've been working on getting all that stuff ripped down from rough sawn lumber that looks something like this when we start. And when we're all done, we end up with something like this. A beautiful piece of wood. There's been a lot of dimensioning and things on the shopsmith. The good news is the shopsmith is working really good. We've got the edger, joiner, the planer, the table saw, the crosscut sled, and when we're patient and we take time, everything is coming out nice and precise. So our first mission today is to get all of this panel stock finished up so that we have all these pieces, because we're not quite to this stage. Once that's done, we're going to set in on doing the dado joints to install these panels in the drawer. This is not the actual drawer, but I'm just giving you a visual here. So when we're all done, this panel will actually fit inside of a drawer that looks something like this. We're going to do a lot of test fitment and everything to make sure that our panels are all fitting correctly, just like we did with these drawer fronts. What we're going to do with these is plane these down to dimension. We've got to do a little bit of edging, and then they're pretty much ready for paint. These will end up being just a solid drawer front. So we've got 3 drawers on the bottom, and then 1 on the top, and then we've got 5-inch drawers all across the top. If this all goes good, we can actually move on to assembling all of these panels, and by the end of today, we'll have all of our doors and drawers assembled and getting close to ready for paint. All right, so we're finally to the point where we can start the dados. We've got all the panel frames cut, and we've got all the drawer faces all ready to go. We did have some struggles planing those. These boards had a little bit of cup in them. And if you watch a couple videos back, I talk about the point of the joiner and the edger versus a thickness planer. A thickness planer does just that. It changes the thickness of the board, but an edger joiner actually makes it flat. And unfortunately, our edger joiner is not this wide. We can only do a 4-inch board. So the only way to get this board truly flat would be to cut it into 4-inch or smaller boards and then laminate them back into a larger single board. But we don't really want to do that. We just want one single big board. So as we put this through the planer, we tried to remove some of the cup, and I think we did an okay job at it, but I would not say that it's probably perfect. I hate to say this word, I hate it. Good enough. It'll work. We also had some issues with thickness. Some of these boards, well, all of them are rough sawn, right? And when you measure a board in one spot, you're going to get the measurement of that board in that spot. But as you run these things through the table saw, the planer, the joiner, you start to see there's some variation in thickness. So I measured that rough sawn board at over 7/8 of an inch, meaning we had quite a bit of material to remove to get beautiful wood. Well, it wasn't that thickness throughout its entirety. So as you run it through the planer, you start to find spots where it's much thinner. In fact, it was too thin in some spots to use for this. So we ended up having to scavenge and cut those pieces out. So I think there's a lot of lessons in working with a rough sawn piece of lumber when you're trying to get finish grade. And then maybe, if there wasn't 5,000 lessons here, this is probably the most pronounced lesson. I'm like really embarrassed to even share this, but maybe somebody will be saved from this eventuality by me sharing. So nearly every thickness planer out there has some propensity to do what's called snipe. Basically, as you feed the board in there, as it gets contact with the rollers, the board either lifts up or it lifts down, one way or the other, and you're going to get an uneven plane. If you look carefully, you can see a thickness change here, and there's a pretty pronounced thickness change here. This is the beginning and obviously the end, and this is where snipe happens. Well, this happened on every single board that we planed. Thankfully, that board is not huge, and I think we can sand that out. We're hoping with the belt sander and a little bit of work, we can get that to be a nice flat surface, because that's going to show whether you stain it, lacquer it, or paint it. The lesson here, I think, would be to plane this board when it was whole and get everything to thickness first. And then all we would have to do is cut the boards out of the larger board, cut the drawer fronts out of the larger board, and there would be no snipe. I did the exact opposite. I cut them already, and then we planed them as drawer fronts, and now we've got ourselves a lot more work to do. We did a little bit of playing around with this hinge cup drilling jig from Craig. there's definitely some calibration that has to happen here, and we kind of wanted to get the bugs worked out of it. I think we've kind of got that narrowed down, so here's hoping when we get to the point where we're drilling the cups for the hinges, we've got that all sorted out. I'm really excited to have a jig for this because consistency here is going to be really key to making sure that our doors don't end up all wonky. I mentioned this in an earlier video that this type of cabinet, I don't know for sure, but people have told me that this is probably one of the most difficult types of cabinets to build. An inset framed cabinet, because if the drawers and doors don't fit right, it just looks dumb. Where if you build an overlay cabinet, face frame or not, the door fits over the frame, and if it's a little off, like your eye can't really pick up on it too bad. But when you have a tiny little reveal all the way around your doors and drawers, if it's off a little bit, your eye goes straight to it. And we did buy a premium set of slides and hinges, which are very adjustable, but they're not infinitely adjustable. So getting this cup drilled in the right spot is imperative, so we don't end up with just some horribly ugly cabinets. In the detail for these hinges, they show you different reveals. So imagine this is the door and this is the cabinet, and the reveal is the gap between them. So you can set this reveal to a minimum of like 1 millimeter, I think, and then you can go out to like 4 millimeters depending on what you want. We're going for 3, which happens to be about 1/8 of an inch. But the problem is this hinge actually indexes to the frame. I guess actually, sorry, this is the door, this is the cabinet, because this is what the hinge cup is drilled on. And then, let's see, so we've got the cup drilled in here, and this one's marked as 5 millimeters, and the hinge would index right there. And it looks like the way that hinge is set, we have maybe a little over 1/16 of a reveal. So I'm assuming if we jump over here to a 3 millimeter reveal, that's going to make a bigger gap. And there it is. There's about 1/8 of an inch reveal. Playing with this, I think working the bugs out on some scrap pieces is a wise idea. The worst case scenario is the adjustability on this hinge is not enough to compensate for however much we screw up the cup. So stay tuned for that. Right now we're going to switch over to the dado setup and the sander setup, and hopefully we can start knocking out some of the fitment and the dados on all this stuff and kind of work through that. I'm still paranoid as heck that somehow we've missed sawing something and we've got to fix some sort of a door, which is why I was wanting to not be too aggressive with our scrap material, just in case we screwed something up and we have to cut new frame stock, which probably means we have to cut new panel stock. Let's just not go there. Let's start on dados. Does it look like we're going to be able to save those on the belt sander?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but for the second time, this one was wonky. Out of square again. But we just figured out that we can actually put the miter gauge onto the belt sander and make something nice and square to the belt sander, which works good. So you can square this table so that's nice and square on here, and then make sure your miter gauge is accurate, and we were able to true up that edge, which I guess if I'm thinking ahead to a situation where we want to lacquer or stain something and not use paint, this could also be used to very nicely detail the edge, which wouldn't be a terrible idea for fitment on like a butcher block or even what we're doing right now. If we ran a sander over these and just touch sanded them, I think that they would mate even more precisely, because no matter how precise you think the table saw is, there's always just a little bit of monkey motion. And then when you try to put two boards together, you're gonna see that gap. And I guess I'm learning out loud here, guys. I'm not teaching people, I'm just sharing what's working. And I'm pretty excited to find out that we can use this, because that means we could actually 45 that also, and we could do all kinds of angled sanding as well. Because this table is super square, we're actually able to use that as a reference for the belt sander. Make sure this is on the bottom, and then just hold even pressure across the belt sander and clean up all that snipe. And even with 150 grit, this is coming out really nice, very much a paintable surface. right, with a little bit of patience, we got the dado blade all set up. We've got the depth correct. We've got the front to back set correct with the fence. So we're ready to start doing our dadoing on the panels. I'm gonna add one level of difficulty. I've never done this before, but we have to use what's called a stop dado. So on the long pieces of the door, if we were to dado all the way to the end, you would see the dado on the bottom and the top of the door or the drawer, which we don't want. So we're actually going to start that dado inside the piece of wood just a little ways. That way it's kind of a blind thing. You can't see it on the end, but on the side pieces, we can actually go all the way. We have to because the panel extends through the end of the board. We're going to figure this out, and hopefully we don't screw it up. So what I've done is I've separated everything over here that is a cross member and everything here that's a vertical member. Everything here gets the stop dado, everything here does not. It took me 1 second, guys, and I screwed up, but I have good news. This can go on the bottom drawer of the bottom of the cabinet, so you won't see it, but I'll know it's there. Doggone it. So anyway, I think I got a system set up. I basically marked my plate there with the start and stop point of my dado, and you can see how the dado just basically quits. And that's, of course, like I said, so that when we put these together, what you'll see on the end here is nothing. Look, just like that. But of course, inside there is the joint that's holding the panel. So I think we got her dialed in. Now we just got to get all these stop dados done, and then I think the high risk portion is done. It's just regular dados after that. Alright, we just did a test run on pocket holes, kind of looking for some sort of a setting on here. There is a little jig that you can set up, but because of the dado, that's going to be problematic because it's going to factor in the dado into the jig, which is not good. But we found kind of a nice sweet spot right here on the edge of the block. Working good. Those holes look nice. They're going to pick up some good meat in the wood. We're not really at risk of blowing out the side. Doesn't look to me like we're chewing up the dado at all, so I think that's going to work. As if earlier in the project making a mistake wasn't a very costly problem, now we're getting to the point where mistakes are legit. If we screw up a piece of wood, we have to go back through all of those processes, getting it planed and dimensioned, sanded, and dadoed. So slowing down here, I think, is going to be really important, and just triple checking everything. Make sure you got the fitment right. We've made kind of a precautionary maneuver by putting anything that does not get pocket holes elsewhere. That way there's no temptation to pick them up. I accidentally made X's on a couple pieces. We sanded those X's off. I'm dadoing so far, I'm basically cutting away the gluable part of that wood. So I'm gonna shallow up my dados a bunch. All right, there it is. Very first panel. I think that'll work. It looks superb. Cool, one more? Uno más. Hot dog. Starting to look like a cabinet, huh? So I think do this times about 7. That's nice. Looks good. Oh yeah. That looks like an end panel to me. That's a nice one too. Looks good, fits good. Checkity check. Just need some paint and some brad nails and we're good. Check. End panel check. Okay, and the next one in the queue is actually all solid fronts. So, and we already check fitted those, so those are good. So actually we're already on to this 24-inch upper. Three down, 6 to go. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's pretty. Even fits too. Same dimensions and all. Not too shabby. That one blew up quick. We did it, guys. It actually worked. They all fit. I'm honestly shocked, just because it seems so easy to make a tiny mistake and it all just falls apart. There it is. There's all the frames, the doors, the drawers, and the end panels, and they are all ready for drilling the hinge cups and installing to the boxes. Obviously, we did not get to the hinge cups today. It made me feel better to do this the slower way, but a more cautious way, and that was one cabinet at a time. So a lot of starting and stopping and moving between workstations, but I think I feel better doing it that way. I think we could have been way more efficient to just dado everything and then assemble everything. We probably could have been done an hour or two ago, but slow and steady wins the race, and this just felt right. All of the drawer fronts, the solid wood drawer fronts, turned out amazing. I'm not sure if I showed those to you guys or not, but it's hard to believe that that started off with that rough sawn piece of lumber, right? I mean, that came off the sawmill at some point during the milling of our timber frame, and here it is. It's now going to be the front of probably our silverware drawer in the kitchenette. The end panels turned out better than I expected. I was super sweating those a couple nights ago and I realized I forgot them. And I was like, oh no, this is gonna be a mess. So I think tomorrow we can pick up with the hinge cups. We definitely don't wanna work on those when we're tired. We're definitely getting tired. We're starting to make little mistakes, tripping over hoses, little things like that. We did have a couple of boo-boos, couple of like moments, lapses in concentration where I put the dado all the way through. But I will tell you that the stop dado was not as hard as I was thinking it would be. This system worked really good where I put a piece of tape where to stop and a piece of tape where to start, and I just kind of adjusted them, and once I had them dialed in, the stop dados were perfect. We kind of came up with a system pretty quickly to double clamp doors. That way we weren't having to reclamp 57 times. And the pocket hole screws, we had some 1" and some 1¼ inch, and we actually found that the 1" wouldn't quite bite as hard as you might want. So we ended up using mostly 1¼ inch, and that seemed to work really well. It really sucked the panel tight, and I think once the glue cures, it's gonna be fine. When I first designed all this stuff in SketchUp, it was just a vision, and to see these things coming to life is just incredible. It's gonna feel super real once those doors can open and they're all bolted to the cabinet carcasses and these things are painted. But I just tell you, this is kind of a confidence boost. Not trying to get cocky here, but I'm pretty freaking excited about this. If we can just get through these last couple of things, attaching them to the cabinets and get the doors and drawers all installed, this is gonna feel like a major win. This project has been fantastic. We're definitely overbuilding, in a way, these cabinets, but I feel like we're working through a lot of bugs. So when we go upstairs and start working on the living area, building cabinets is gonna be a lot less intimidating. I don't regret using the pocket hole screws because I feel like it's working for us. We understand it, we're getting consistent joinery. So I'm really glad we didn't decide to do biscuits or dowels or anything like that. I think that might have just introduced a new variable to this and we'd be really frustrated. Those doors look great. I think they're gonna be super strong.